Welcome to Money Conversations with KJ. KJ is a lifelong entrepreneur who's made a lot of money, lost a lot of money, and found his way back again. If you're looking for a sterile how-to, you're in the wrong place. KJ and his guests will walk you through real-life situations told by the people who live them, and they are as messy as they are inspiring. Each episode will offer lessons learned, advice on how to replicate successes and avoid pitfalls, and a new perspective to power your financial literacy. Far from a one-size-fits-all, this podcast can help you build a roadmap to your personal promised land. Milk and honey for some, whiskey and steak for others, and remind you that you're not alone on this journey.
Well, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the show. I'm super excited today. Today's guest, you guys are going to learn some amazing stuff today. And I remember when I learned it years ago, it really changed my life. And today's guest is Lonnie Weissman, owner and founder of Executive Asset Solutions Group. What is that exactly? Asset protection. Lonnie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much for having me here today. And thank you to all your listeners here for allowing me to speak to them today.
So let's talk about asset protection and why someone would want to listen to this show. Like, what is that? What am I going to learn?
Well, asset protection is basically the practice of protecting your assets. It is exactly what it sounds like. And your assets are items such as your home, cars, furniture, jewelry, paintings, bank accounts, any assets, tangible things that you have, you want to make sure that those are protected.
Great. So I always like to ask my guests that come in here, because we talk about financial literacy, and this is way deep. By the time you get to here, you should be sitting pretty solid. That think back when you were however old that you started really thinking about money, valuing money, and what you did, how you handle it. I mean, how did you get to be where you are today?
Well, as a young kid, I always, for some reason, just put a value on not wasting my money because I had to work hard for it, such as doing all kinds of chores around the house, mainly outside chores, such as mowing and trimming the grass, having to trim the bushes in the yard, picking all the weeds out of the garden. And we had a pretty sizable garden, and that would take me a few hours. And it's that hybrid Bermuda grass that grows in there. So trying to get the roots out of there can put some damage on your hands. And as a young kid, it's something you definitely want to make sure that you don't throw away your hard work. And so I always had a tendency to stash my money away as a young kid. And my allowance, I would also throw that in there as well. And then obviously when the allowance grew from $5 to $10 and from $10 to $20 a week, I would continue to keep stashing that. And then when I opened up my first bank account, it was when I first put that first deposit in there, every time I would continue to make small deposits after that. And I would always see like an odd type of a number in there, like $243 in my account. Like, oh man, I can't wait to get to 300. And then all of a sudden, once I hit 300, then obviously a couple more small deposits happen, and I'm at 310, 341, 362. It's like, man, I got to make it to 400. And it like became a game to me. And and that's what kind of started that real serious mindset on putting that huge value on money, mainly from a perspective to make sure that you don't waste it, that you live within your means, and just don't spend it as fast as you make it.
Well, and I talked to a lot of people about this. And so that was when you were young. And believe me, every time I had to go in the yard and pull those Bermuda weeds, it was because I got in trouble, right? Like, oh, crap, I got in trouble. I got to go pull weeds, right? But did you get all of this from mom and dad? Did mom and dad teach you this? Or, I mean, where did that, because at that age, I mean, that's who's teaching us about money is mom and dad, right? And what to do, what we shouldn't do. Hey, you worked hard, go buy yourself whatever you want. And you didn't, you chose to save. So where did that come from?
Well, I would say a majority of that was just from me and just seeing that my parents did not waste their money. And basically that's where that came from. And then I would just always remember just the words on just whenever I got my allowance, they would say, okay, now remember, this has to last till next week, and that's about where the extent of it was at. It stopped right there. And basically the burden was on me to make sure I realized that, hey, that $10 had to last me all the way till next week.
So, yeah, I mean, you really just followed by example, which is a great lesson because unfortunately, there's a lot of kids out there, and they are watching us as parents, right? I mean, my kids are grown and gone, but the little ones are watching you. They really are. And if they see that you're being what we were going to call not responsible with your money and just blowing your money, those are probably the habits they're going to pick up. And you picked up the habits of your parents, which are the habits that you have today. So kudos to your parents. They kind of did it just subconsciously. They didn't even know.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Yeah, I mean, my parents did a good job on that. They never really did sit me down and discuss with me, what to do with your money. I mean, when I was a young kid, that discussion never took place. Which is much different than the story of your daughter, which, I mean, to all of you out there, if you haven't heard Kevin's daughter's story, it's probably one of the most phenomenal stories I've ever heard. And I tell him that every single time that I see him. So I never did have the benefit of that type of discussion and mentoring and coaching that you gave your daughter, which once again, congratulations on that.
Well, I really appreciate that. I have 4 kids, and I tell my kids when they have kids, like, you've never been a parent before, and you don't know what to do. Well, by the time you have 4, you've got it all figured out. So she was definitely the lucky one of the 4, even though I do teach the other 4, and it's really cool. She's going to be on the podcast sometime this week, she told me. So we're definitely going to get that story out there, which is really inspiring because she's 21 now, and what she's done and accomplished at just the young age of 21. So thank you for that. So you got good with money. You wanted to save it, and you're building up. I mean, today you own a company about asset protection. How did you get into asset protection? I mean, I don't know that there's anybody out there that says, I want to be an asset protection specialist, right?
Right. That's a great question. Yeah, my story is it's kind of a neat one there. I mean, I got started in the sign business out there, the electric sign business, and I was in that particular trade for about 10 years. And then I segued over into becoming an electrician in these hotels out here, 1 downtown, 2 on the Strip. And one of the hotels that I ended up working at on the Strip, ended up meeting a specific individual who went to work for a company that is similar to my company. And after a number of years in a particular hotel business as an electrician, I went on ahead and I made the change over to the company that she was in, because she kept telling me how good of a job I would do there because of my background in finance that I have from college, no field experience whatsoever. And so she kind of talked me into going over there and highly recommended me to the company. And the company was very skittish on wanting to hire me at first because I had 0 sales experience. And it was a sales-driven type of a company right there. And I went on ahead and basically let them know that they could put all their confidence in me and that I would do fairly well for them. And that happened. I became very, very successful at that company. And then I eventually left that company and started my own.
Nice. I think the good lesson there is going to be how you were doing these other jobs, being an electrician and whatnot, and an opportunity came along, right? And I'm a huge believer in opportunity happens for all of us all of the time. I think the difference is recognizing it, right? And I think a lot of people don't recognize opportunity when it's knocking at the door and saying, come on in. And you did. Right. One, you had schooling for finance background, because that's apples and oranges from being an electrician and whatnot, and getting your degree in finance and then saying, hey, you know what? I got an opportunity here. I'm going to go ahead and go for it and not have the fear, and stay in your comfort zone, because I think the comfort zone is where people get in trouble. Right. You got to be ready and to get comfortable being uncomfortable is really, in my belief, how you're going to be successful throughout life. So you got that opportunity and went and learned the ropes, so to speak?
Well, yeah, because I was very fortunate that at this particular company that they had all of the tools in there that I needed regarding from the legal point of view, financial planning point of view, the accounting point of view, estate planning point of view, asset protection point of view. And I was able to hit all of those departments and continuously learn about this particular industry and this particular topic on how all of those particular areas fit together and how they affect an individual's life and the individual as a business owner's life. And it definitely is a lot of content that I had to end up learning. And I also took the responsibility myself to go ahead and continue to keep on learning and learning and learning, as opposed to once my shift was over, I didn't just go home and, forget about the job. I wanted to keep on learning. If there was anything in there that I didn't understand, I wanted to make sure that I knew it. I happen to be an individual that I'm like a sponge. I like to soak up as much information as I possibly can, so that way I am not unprepared.
Nice. So you went through there and you must have got the entrepreneur tickle somewhere, because you decided, you know what, I want to do this on my own and open up this company that you've had now for 20 plus years?
Well, no, I was actually 20 years in this industry. So now this particular company here, I've actually had my own now for 8 years.
Okay. Well, let's talk to the folks out there, the real meaning of asset protection and what it means for you, right? So some people believe that, well, yeah, if you're a business owner, you need asset protection. But, I'm a W-2 earner. I work for Bob over here. So explain to them that that's not the case.
One thing those individuals need to look at is they need to look around them and see what type of assets do they have. Do you own a home? Do you own some expensive vehicles? Do you own paintings, jewelry? Do you have a significant bank account, retirement accounts, things of that nature? And so if the answer to any one of those or all of those happens to be yes, then you definitely want to start putting some thought into protecting what you currently have, because the last thing that one wants to do is to lose everything that they have worked their entire life to accumulate.
So let's educate them now. Then there's everybody know. Well, I'm gonna say everybody. Most people know there's multiple different kinds of corporations, and let's go down the path of a W-2 earner. This is our avatar. W-2 earner makes $75,000 a year, has been in his house for 10 years, and has accumulated some cash in the bank and jewelry and miscellaneous whatever, but it's all in his or her personal name. Where would you start?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd be looking at, there's not much we can end up doing about his wages, because a W-2 wages cannot be issued to a corporation. They are issued right to that individual, unfortunately, where they're going to be paying the highest level of tax on that particular individual at that specific wage earning. And then as far as the other assets that you mentioned there, his home, we'd have to look at to see how much equity that particular individual has in his home. Did he go ahead and refinance the house and he has zero equity in it and he pulled all the equity out, and so now he's mortgaged 100%? Or does he almost have the house paid off to where maybe he's got a $300,000 home and $200,000 or $250,000 of it is equity and he only owes $50,000? Okay, well that's a much different scenario right there. In regards to, if he's got the house mortgage to the hilt, there's really not much there to protect because he doesn't really own that much. But if he's got a lot of equity in that house, we need to look at protecting that house.
So again, we got S corporations, we got C corporations, we got LLCs, and then there's subs of all of those. So what would you recommend for that type of person?
That particular person right there, I would end up probably doing some trust work for them. Because you'd want to go ahead and go into a vehicle known as a living trust. Living trust is something that it happens to be a vehicle that people put their assets into that allows for them to avoid probate upon death. And for those that have never heard the term probate, probate is a very ugly process. That what happens is that when an individual passes away, the state and federal government will come in, take a snapshot of that particular person's entire estate and appraise it and put a value on those assets. Then it will go ahead and go through the probate courts. And generally that can be anywhere between 6 to 3 years, maybe even sometimes upwards of 5 years. And while you're going through this tenuous process here, you're going to start acquiring and accumulating fees such as attorney's fees, court costs, probate fees. I mean, stuff just starts adding up on top of one another. And before you know it, you're going to end up losing anywhere in the neighborhood of between 20 to 50% of what you had in asset value just out of probate. Whereas if you would have had a nice, properly formed trust where all these assets were put into, all of those assets would have passed right down to the beneficiaries completely probate free, 100%.
Right. A friend of mine, unfortunately, went through that years back, where you got to be careful that, a lot of times your parents will pass and they have assets and they did not have anything, and all other assets go through the probate process. And understand, people, that out there, you're not the one writing the checks to pay these attorneys and everybody else. They take it right out of the assets when the dust settles, right? It's just they're adding them all up. And you may be thinking, hey, mom passed away and she had $250,000 of assets and you're going to get $250,000. Well, you're not. They're going to soak up, like you said, I've heard, the 25 to 50%, which is a lot. I mean, up to half. If you're expecting 250 and you end up with 125, you're going to be shocked. Like, how come I didn't know about this stuff? So really huge understanding probate and why this asset protection when you're an individual just out there as a W-2 earner. Now, that being said, a lot of people out there in today's world are making a living and they are 1099 employees, right?
Yes.
Which I think is the best way to go.
Absolutely.
Because if someone hires you and they go, well, do you want to be a 1099 or do you want to be an employee and we'll take out your taxes for you? And a lot of people will get scared and be like, no, you handle it. I don't want to handle that. And then just get your paycheck. Okay, that's cool. But if you're a 1099 employee, explain the benefits of that.
Oh boy, yes. Kevin, you hit it right on the head when you said if they ever got asked the question, if you want to be a 1099 employee, the answer to that question should always be a resounding yes. And I mean, let me say that again. The answer to that question is yes, if you can be a 1099 employee. Because basically what that is you are basically your own company. You are your own employer in all intents and purposes right there. And yes, you are responsible for your own taxes, but at the same time, you also get all the nice tax advantages, such as being able to deduct a number of items that you normally cannot deduct if you are a W-2 employee. And you also have access to a much more broad array of retirement plans that you are able to fund on behalf of yourself and your company, as opposed to you are restricted when you are a W-2 employee. You are capped out at how much you can put into a particular 401k or Roth IRA or something of that nature, where there is a whole new door and avenue that opens up right there, which will end up accelerating your retirement planning. And keep in mind, folks out there, that on your retirement planning, as you continue to contribute these large sums each and every year, that money is growing on a compounded basis. Compounded basis is such a phenomenal thing. Kevin covers that to a big extent in the courses that he ends up teaching. So definitely, if you've not covered that at all with him, I would definitely encourage you to make sure that you listen real closely to that topic, because that's a big one for you. But yeah, that's a big portion of it right there, is your tax savings, being able to accelerate your retirement planning. And those are two big ones for you.
Absolutely. I mean, I've done 1099s forever. I can't even remember being an employee. I think I was 21 or roughly. I remember my first company I started at 22. So, just really remember out there the benefit way outweighs of you being just a W-2 employee. Well, let's go down the road of whether you're a 1099 or you decide to open up whatever business online, or a pizza store or a lawn mowing business or whatever it may be, that you've got to protect yourself, right? And not just to protect yourself, but like you were talking about, these tax savings, and on your website, and I have your website up here, and the advantages of where you open your corporation is vital. So I'm going to let Lonnie explain, because we got the whole State of the Union here. You could live in Ohio, you could be in Florida, New York, wherever you are, and thinking, well, I'll just, go down to my local state and open me a corporation for my new business. But explain why, and I know the 2 states, but I'll have you explain why it should be in one of the 2 states.
Okay, very good. Yeah. One great benefit that you have and the flexibility that you have as a business owner is the ability to be able to set up your business entity, whether it's a corporation, an LLC, or limited partnership, in any state that you want to. So if you can go ahead and set your business up, the business entity, in any state that you want to, you obviously would want to go ahead and set it up in the place that gives you the best benefits. And the states that have the best benefits right now, the 2 that Kevin's referring to, is Nevada and Delaware. And in recent years, Wyoming has kind of touched the map, but they have just put their toe in the water on all this. And I'll explain that here in a few minutes as well, too. But first off, Delaware used to be number 1 for a number of years. Some of you out there probably end up hearing Delaware this, Delaware that, get incorporated in Delaware. And that was true all the way up until 1991. And that's when Nevada revised their state statutes. And now all of a sudden, that vaulted Nevada all the way up to the number 1 slot back in 1991. And the statutes were revised based upon the gaming, mining, and tourism industry. And that's how these laws were able to be put on the books. That puts Nevada in the number 1 slot, which now the biggest reason why Nevada's number 1 is the asset protection laws that we have out here. Because Nevada happens to be the only state in the nation that has it physically written in the statutes that the owners and shareholders of the company can never be sued personally on behalf of the business. And the only way that that could ever happen is if you intentionally commit fraud. First of all, fraud is extremely tough for somebody to prove. And I definitely wouldn't tell anybody to go out there and commit fraud, but you would have to commit intentional fraud out there in order for you to even be close to being penetrated here. But Nevada totally protects you 100%. And then a number of years back, about 6 or 7 years ago, Nevada put a new law on the book that now gives you reverse piercing protection, which means that should you end up getting sued personally, some type of personal lawsuit, you get in a car wreck and you get sued, or you get in a fight, assault and battery, the opposing party ends up suing you, things of that nature. They cannot end up naming the ownership of your Nevada companies as part of that lawsuit. That is a huge benefit. That is so big that, I mean, that is worth it right there.
Yeah, I mean, to be protected on both sides, right? So you own company ABC, whatever it is, and something happens over there, someone tries to sue you. That's one thing. They can't get personal, but hey, personal stuff happens to us, yes. Right? And then they're like, well, personally, he doesn't own anything. It's all in his corporation names. Well, cool, let's just sue the corporation then. But now we're protected from both sides?
Yes.
That's unbelievable. Now, I mean, I've been protected now over 10 years when I opened up my S Corporation. I've got my trust set up, and I've got my LLCs for my sub companies. I mean, I'm layered out. People tell me, I just say, like, you want to sue me? These nice shoes I have on, you probably can get those, right? I go, but roll the dice, spend your money on your attorneys, because you're not going to get anywhere near my assets, right? And that's vitally important. I mean, when you start accumulating assets, $50, $100, $200, $300 plus $1,000, I mean, it could hurt if you have to start all over again and you're 40, 50 something years old. Yes. So it's vital. So that's protection, right? We got to protect ourselves because, again, you were talking before, you and I were talking about the litigious society that we live in, that everybody just goes, oh, I'll sue you, right? And the attorneys are making all kinds of money. Let's dig into the benefits. So we know Nevada really is the benefit. You don't have to live here, right? You can live anywhere you want and still own a Nevada corporation. But the benefits here, and they're listed on Lonnie's website, and I'll leave that in the description and share that with you guys. But we have no corporate income tax, no unitary tax, no estate tax, no tax on corporate shares, no franchise tax, minimal employer payroll tax, no personal income tax, which is the biggest one in my eyes. That's the biggest chunk, meaning no state tax here in Nevada, nominal, just minimal fees, no franchise tax on income, no inheritance and gift tax. That's a huge one, right? If you're back east, a lot of wealth back east, right? A lot of
Yes.
wealth everywhere. But these people who want to give their kids or grandkids or whatever money, and they're like, man, that's going to cost me a lot of money just to give a lot of money.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to be able to have your assets protected through this state, which is a great thing. I mean, there are obviously, if you live in whatever other state and you're incorporated in Nevada, there's a couple of small fees you got to pay annually. But I think, as my son likes to say, the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great saying.
You
Great
know,
saying.
so go ahead and pay your few $100, and every state's different. So you guys got to go out there and you got to check because it's your Nevada corporation doing business in Florida, let's say, and Florida says, "Oh, great, yeah, you can do business over here, Mr. Nevada Corporation. Our fees are $X." And just to share with you guys out there, depending where you live, I mean, I've seen them as low as $100. You were mentioning earlier that, I mean, they're as high as $750 a year, which is not high if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of assets. You're like, I got to pay $750 to protect these things. It's really cheap insurance.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a way that people need to end up looking at this, that either as an insurance / investment in your company or just a line item as a cost of doing business, because that's basically what it is. And this specific cost of doing business is going to give you a big time amount of asset protection and tax savings, regardless of what state that you're in.
Right. So as I look through all this, and again, I'm layered out correctly. I'm not worried about me, but I really want to share with the people, and I'm getting to my kids all making sure they're correct. They all don't have kids, but my son actually is the only one that's made me a grandfather. But to protect yourself correctly, the minute, you're having a baby, buy a house. I mean, you got to start thinking of this stuff ASAP.
Yes.
Don't wait until you've accumulated. Every single day you walk out your front door, something weird can happen. So talk to the audience about how, is this a real daunting process? Is this once a year? Is this going to cost me a fortune? This just sounds like it's so involved, and we're probably scaring the crap out of people out there.
Yeah, this is often a topic that does confuse a lot of people. It also scares them as well. And the great thing about this is that all you would have to do is get in contact with me, and I would be able to go ahead and take all of this particular complication and scaredness right off of your plate. It's almost like when you go into, and let's say you visit a doctor and you're getting ready to have heart problems or have a heart surgery or something of that nature, probably makes you nervous. But at the same time, when the doctor ends up sitting you down and explaining everything to you and saying exactly what he's going to do, makes you feel a lot better, as opposed to you trying to figure out the different parts of the heart, and what types of surgeries are needed for XYZ process. And instead of going through that and you trying to become a doctor, you're going to go ahead and go to your heart surgeon,
Right.
the individual who already knows what he's talking about. This is no different here. This took me a very long time to learn and a long time to master.
So they're probably out there thinking, well, I don't want to move to Nevada. And you don't have to live here. Okay, guys, you don't have to live here to do that. You don't have to have residency here. Explain to them the process. Again, let's just pick whatever city, USA, Nashville. You live in Nashville, you start a company, and you heard like, man, I should get Nevada Corporation. I got to go get a residency, or I got to go do this, that, or the other thing. What is the process for them that, and I know they don't have to move here, but go ahead and lay it out for them.
Yep, there's two different scenarios there. Number one is which is the most common, about 90% of the business owners fall into this category, is that if you happen to own a business in your state, let's talk about Tennessee here, we're in Nashville, Tennessee, as Kevin brought up, and let's say that you have a brick and mortar building that you have to walk into every day, like let's say if you own a restaurant or a gym or something of that nature, where there's a physical building there for you to do business in, or if you have W-2 employees, which therefore means that you are registered with that state because you have employees there. Or number three, if there is an industry-specific license that you must obtain from your state in order for you to do the business that you're doing, such as a real estate agent or a real estate broker who has to be licensed with the state. General contractors have to be registered with their state. Doctors and attorneys have to be registered with their state. Practices of that nature that require those specific licenses, that ties you to that state, along with the brick and mortar building and the W-2 employees. So in those particular scenarios there, we would just go ahead and set up your Nevada company and then you would register that Nevada company to do business in your own state. And then you would operate just like you normally would. And your big advantages that you get by setting it up here in Nevada as opposed to out there in Tennessee is, number one, you are going to get the most protective corporate veil in America. Your assets are going to be completely protected personally from your business, and your business is going to be completely protected from you. And also, number two, Nevada has huge privacy laws out here to where the owners and shareholders of a Nevada company are not required to be listed on public record. And that is a big deal right there, because 1 in 4 business owners are sued each and every year. And a majority of those lawsuits are litigious in nature. So therefore, you get a lot of ambulance chasing attorneys out there that just go through and they just try to scour databases and try to find business owners and have their clients go make up lawsuits. And then they go after them for this specific lawsuit. And then all of a sudden you're having to pour out money for this particular lawsuit. And you got to think about this for a second, that even if you won that lawsuit, how much did it actually cost you to get to that final verdict? You're talking about time away from work, the money you spent with your attorney, the emotional stress on going to court, however many days you had to go to. You're just better off being off of public record as an owner. So therefore, they can just leave you alone.
Yeah. I mean, I've had so many deep conversations about that. And again, I'm a good visual. I like visualizing things. And so I paint the picture of the term corporate veil, right? Think of it as like a big curtain, and all of your assets are behind there, and the attorneys can't peek inside. They don't know. So they may have hearsay, hey, I know he owns X percent of that company and it's worth X dollars, and they're trying to sue you or whatever, and they're going to come after that. But if an attorney or for-profit businesses, right, they want to make money. If they can't see your assets, even though they know you have assets, they can't get in there. They're not going to open a lawsuit because they don't work for free, right? They're looking for assets. That's how they're going to make money, because they make a percentage of what they recover. So the corporate veil, and the only way that they can get in there, which is really hard, is to prove fraud, which is a he said, she said argument, right? And to a judge, who do you believe? It's very, very difficult to prove fraud. So be careful not to be out there. Don't do fraud, obviously, but understand you didn't do anything wrong. Someone's trying to sue you. You got X assets, cars, houses, cash, whatever, that they can't get in there. They're not looking. They don't have a clue what you own. And then the lawsuits, generally speaking, are going to be dropped, right?
Yes. Yeah, that generally helps right there, because it basically puts the onus of the big decision here on the client, to where you've got the attorney to go ahead and say what you just got through saying, hey, look, I'm not going to be able to get to this particular person's assets because it doesn't look like that they have anything, and I don't work for free. So I'm going to recommend you, Mr. Client, to not move forward. So now that client would have to say, well, okay, what are we going to do? I thought I had a solid case here. So do I want to go ahead and throw good money and try to chase something that more than likely is not going to come to fruition?
Exactly. Again, big point. I mean, guys out there, gals, just understand, if $20,000 is all you have, then that's a lot of money, and it's a lot of money anyway, but protect it. I mean, really, really protect it. Getting back to the benefit of Nevada, this no personal income tax. Let's talk about that. That's big, because right now in Nevada, we're in Vegas. I mean, there's so many Californians coming here for that particular reason alone, because they're raising that state tax again.
Yes. Yeah, that state is actually the worst in the entire nation. They're anti-business. They tax the living daylights out of both individuals and businesses. And like you mentioned, people are fleeing that state in droves by, every single day. And there's only a few states out there that do not have any state income tax. Obviously Nevada, as we're talking about right now. You also have states out there such as like Texas and Florida. They also don't have any state income tax either. That's why when you end up seeing out there a lot of the data and the reports that when people are leaving these high tax states, such as California and New York, you see them always fleeing to Florida, fleeing to Texas, fleeing to Nevada. One of the biggest reasons is because of this no state income tax, which means that you're instantly saving, depending on what state you're coming from, anywhere between about 8 to 15% on your particular income. So let's just say if you're earning, to say if you earned $1,000, I mean, 10% income tax, that's $100. So you're giving away $100 of that 1,000 just so you can live in that state. Where in Nevada, you're going to keep that $100. And then in regards, one thing I do want to bring up here regarding those other states that do not have any state income tax, such as Florida and Texas, they have what is known as a franchise tax. So people may say, oh, okay, but Texas and Florida don't have any state income tax either. But however, they do have a franchise tax, which is a tax that the state levies for the privilege of a business entity such as a corporation or an LLC or a limited partnership to do business in that state, even if you formed it in that state. So for instance, those franchise taxes are right in the neighborhood of about 4.5%. So
I remember, I was talking with somebody the other day. I'm a Joe Rogan follower, and Joe has had his podcast in LA since he started it. And he just got that big contract with Spotify, $100 million. He decided, I'm leaving. I'm getting a contract for $100 million. State tax here on top of the franchise tax. I mean, he's given up 18% of his money out of $100 million. That's $18 million. So he opted, I'm out. He's going to Texas, so he's going to pay that franchise tax, but still saving that state tax. I know that Tony Robbins did the same thing, right? He moved to Florida. He wanted to be near the water down there. But a lot of folks are just leaving for that reason. The high earners are just jumping out. They just can't take it. And the low earners, believe me, if you're in California and you're making under $75,000 a year, right? And then anywhere else in the union, you can live a decent lifestyle on $75,000 a year. In California, sorry, you're struggling. You're check to check. Yes. You're check to check in that state. And that's why they're all just moving out of there. I don't know what that state's going to do. It's going to implode or something. But it's a beautiful state. I mean, we all go there. We vacation there on a regular basis. It's a beautiful state. It's just tough and expensive to live in, make a living and give up that much money. So understanding how to protect yourself, how your taxes are going to be, affected where you live is vitally important. So if you open up any type of business, and we were talking about online businesses, it doesn't have to be brick and mortar, right?
That's exactly right. It can be online as well too.
Because there's just more and more these days online businesses opening up. There's so much money to be made online. But talk to the folks about having an online business. They might think, well, why do I need to incorporate? It's online. I mean, I'm not hurting anybody. Why would somebody sue me?
Well, it's definitely not just all about suing you, because first off, and I'll cover that topic right now, is that let's say, for instance, the products that you advertise on there are products that you sell on your website. How do you know that the consumer is not going to hurt themselves on that particular product, misuse the product? Or let's say if it's some type of a consumable good that they may get sick off the product or get an allergic reaction. Could be some type of lotion you're selling or whatever it may be. And that particular individual has some type of adverse reaction to that particular product or gets hurt on it. Well, that's an easy lawsuit for that particular company to end up having to go up against. And let's say that you're just selling information or you're just providing information out there. Believe it or not, I have seen every type of lawsuit in the book over 20 years. And I'll share a couple of those with you here in a minute. But however, you could just put information up there and you could have somebody come up and say, well, that information put me under emotional duress. So now I'm going to go ahead and file a lawsuit against that company just because I haven't been able to settle down. I haven't been able to sleep for a week. And I'm just totally under emotional duress ever since I ended up seeing that information. Believe me, that stuff happens. Okay. I mean, some of these lawsuits that I was talking to you about, that I wanted to mention is, there used to be, not used to be, but I mean, there was this case years ago to where you had an individual who rented a Winnebago driving down the highway on the freeway and goes ahead and he puts the particular steering column there on auto, on cruise control. And he's thinking, what he does after he puts it on cruise control, he gets up to pour himself a cup of coffee from the coffee maker. And obviously, I think we all know right now as I'm telling this story, what happened. Okay, motorhome goes off the road, turns over, and destroys the motorhome. He gets hurt. But however, he ends up winning a major lawsuit. The dollar amount, it's not coming to my head right at this moment in time, but it was pretty substantial. And now if you go ahead and go to any Winnebago dealership out there, you will see in their contracts to where it will specifically say cruise control does not mean autopilot. So, I mean, how much worse can you get than that? And I know that every single one of us all still remember the McDonald's hot coffee given to the lady in the drive-thru. Okay.
Right.
And this was way back in the day before, iced coffee became popular. So obviously, whenever you ordered a coffee, everybody expected it to be hot. 100% of customers expect that coffee to be hot. Well, as we all know, coffee spilled on her in the drive-thru. She sues McDonald's because the coffee was too hot. She wins. And it's you just never know when those types of lawsuits are going to take place.
Right. What a story. I mean, everybody listening is probably flabbergasted that the guy won that lawsuit, but just that tiny little phrase, right? Autopilot, cruise control. To all of us, it means the same thing.
Yes.
But an attorney is going to tell you differently.
Yeah. And you've also seen a number. Yeah. Attorney will definitely end up twisting that more ways than one to make his client come out on top. And I'm sure that, that we've all ended up hearing here lately too, including the scenes, the lawsuits that I've seen over the number of years, to where you have burglars that when they go in and burglarize someone's home, when they go through the window and the window cuts the window that they just now ended up breaking on this individual's home, the window cuts them either on the stomach, the leg, the arm, and they got seriously hurt. But yet the burglar goes ahead and sues the homeowner because their window cut them, which is the one that they ended up burglarizing. And guess what? The burglar ends up winning the lawsuit. It's just astounding.
All the more important to have asset protection. I mean, I told you guys in the beginning, this episode here, vitally important with our financial literacy. And we're all trying to learn out there how to think and act with our money and our time and what to do and, create income and grow your wealth. But if you don't think about this, guys, man, you could just one day, 2 words from an attorney to switch it around and boom, it's all gone, right?
Yes, without a doubt.
It's just unbelievable. Well, shoot, Lonnie, this has really been an awesome conversation. I know the audience got a lot from it. We're going to go ahead and give you Lonnie's information. You want to reach out to him to help you. You do free consultations, I think, was it?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. You can reach Lonnie at MYEASG.com. Right? Lonnie, LONNY at MYEASG.com. And he'll help you out, man. He helps me out. I know I got one of my corporations sitting with you because the other ones were already open when we started. But again, thanks for coming out. Thanks for sharing. There's so much more to say and talk about. I'll probably have you out again, dig in a little deeper. But
Sounds great. And I want to appreciate you once again for taking time out of your day to have me here in your studio to give this valuable information to all of your listeners.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, if you like what you heard today, subscribe to my podcast on YouTube. Hit the like, smash that like button, subscribe there. We're going to remember we release a new episode every Wednesday. So you guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed that episode. Really enjoyed making all these episodes for you. Remember, we're just having conversations with people's journey with money and the things they did right with it, the things that did wrong with it, and how did they really come about getting their mindset with money. So every episode's different. We all have a good takeaway from them. So do me a favor, hit the like button, smash the like button, and subscribe to my channel because every episode that I do is going to be different as all our journeys are different. So you guys take care, and we'll talk to you next week.